Yeah, that's exactly what I said in our last episode. The real risk is not the state sponsors of terrorism, but it's when the weapons that they use get into the hands of regular criminals. And then they use those military grade cyber weapons on you. Listen to what she said. That answers the question of why I got into cybersecurity.
We do several $1 billion in cybersecurity.
Subtle brag.
But I tell you,
so what you're saying, what we need to do is we need to start a campaign to get you on this forum next year. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah, right.
All right, listen.
Listen up,
all of our viewers,
keep going,
all of our listeners. Right now, we got to start a campaign. We're going to get Michael C. Hill on next year's World Forum. We're going to do it. The World Economic Forum 2024. Michael C. Hill. That should have been the headline. Welcome back to the Cyber Guys podcast, the cybersecurity podcast for everybody. My name is Andrew Valencia, and of course, I'm joined by Mike Hill. And today, we're actually going to take a look at the World Economic Forum's Protecting Cyberspace Amid Exponential Change. So we're going to actually take a look at the forum that they had today. It's going to be some good stuff. But first, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit that like button. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. Glad that you're here. And if you're coming on back, thanks a whole lot for coming back. Appreciate you coming and showing support. Hit that like button. Double check that ring icon is hit. And that's about it. Let's go ahead and jump into it.
All right.
I'm Karen Cho, co-anchor of Squawk Box Europe from CNBC. Thank you so much for joining us. A big warm welcome to the World Economic Forum participants, delegates and stakeholders. Thank you so much for joining this special discussion, Protecting Cyberspace Amid Exponential Change. It was roughly 6 months ago, I was on a similar stage here at the World Economic Forum with the Secretary General of Interpol, who was warning us about escalating cybersecurity risks, that effectively military-grade cyber weapons would eventually end up in the hands of criminals, bringing more sophisticated cyber attacks. From state actors amid the war in Ukraine to cyber criminals, the threat is...
So, Mike, we've already seen that happen in the past, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said in our last episode. I mean, the real risk is not the state sponsors of terrorism doing their terrorism, but it's when the weapons that they use get into the hands of regular criminals. And then they use those military grade cyber weapons on you, against you, hitting your information systems, robbing you of your identity. Robbing you of your valuable resources, damaging your reputation, stealing your trade secrets, whatever it is that you have at risk. It's when the military grade cyber weapons are used against you that we're in another game altogether.
Joining us on stage, Sadie Creese, who is Professor of Cybersecurity, University of Oxford, United Kingdom. Doreen Bogdan-Martin, Secretary General, International Telecommunication Union, or ITU. Chuck Robbins, Chair and CEO of Cisco, and Brad Smith, Vice Chair and President of Microsoft. Thank you all for joining us today.
Look at who they have here. Their guests are showing us one of their biggest blind spots right from the beginning. You have someone from the ITU. You have someone from Cisco. You have someone who's an academic from Oxford.
Someone from Microsoft.
And then someone from Microsoft.
Right.
Think about that. Everyone in that group that they're looking to for their advice, that they're looking to for their comfort or maybe the fear or whatever, they're all coming from a particular point of view that is already heavy geared toward technical solutions. The only person that maybe has some objectivity from that is the professor from Oxford, but then that's a purely academic perspective. Right. So right from the jump, this forum to discuss this topic has a huge blind spot.
Well, first up, let's start with some data, some key takeaway points from the 2023 Global Cybersecurity Outlook report. This is a study of cyber professionals, and business leaders, how they view the threat. Effectively, the threat has changed. The focus now is on business disruption and reputational damage from cyber criminals than was the case a year ago. Also, the perception gap between business and cyber leaders on the importance of cyber risk management has changed. 91% of all respondents now believe that a far-reaching, catastrophic cyber event is at least somewhat likely in the next 2 years.
Right there, that's your headline. That's your headline. That's the catastrophic headline that was written. And you don't have to read anything more. You don't have to watch the video any more than that. You just take that little clip, pop it onto a headline, and that's what makes the news. That's what we talked about last week. Yeah.
Yeah, but the real danger of that, especially leading with that, is it's very telling that 90% agree that sort of thing is going to happen, but 70% don't really see the need to do very much about it. That tells you a lot. That tells you that while they believe it, they don't see the relevance of it, and the idea of having anything really to do with, their day-to-day business. That disconnect is obvious. It's kind of like the question is, do you think it's going to rain today, or this week? Most people are going to say, yeah, it's probably going to rain this week. But if you don't have a leaky roof, or you don't perceive or know that you have a leaky roof, how much do you care about the rain?
That's what it is.
You
well, that's the thing, right? Am I going to buy? I know it's going to rain. Should I buy an umbrella? And your perception is, I don't really need to care about water falling from the sky because I'm staying indoors. And that's a blind spot. 100%.
It's a blind spot. Big time.
Professor, why don't you kick it off for us? You're an expert in the field of cybersecurity, threat modelling and detection. Are cyber experts and business leaders right to fear an imminent, damaging cyber attack?
Absolutely. And in fact, the geopolitical instability that we're witnessing is increasing the challenges and actually the pace at which this risk is growing. If we see the situation where nations involved in conflicts become less restrained in cyberspace, and that's going to have very significant consequence for us all.
So we're already couching this. We're already couching this in geopolitics, and we talked about that last week, right? When we talk geopolitics, we're talking about nation state actors who are threatening what, right? Critical infrastructure. So we're already couching this in one very narrow spectrum, I think. Whereas the threat is to all.
Yeah, but she made an interesting expression, just a little nuanced expression there. She says, when nation state actors stop behaving so cautiously as they engage in conflict. That's really what she's alluding to. The fact that we know that there are nation state actors who have effective cyber weapons that could be applied against the critical infrastructure of an enemy, but they've been restrained. They're holding back from using these things. But maybe they won't be as restrained because of whatever conflagration they're involved in the future. That seems to be the premise of her thesis here.
And I don't think she's wrong. That's the nuance of the headline when we talk about catastrophe, right? Is that we know we have a good understanding of the threats that are out there, and we have a general understanding of what they can do and what the limits of what they can do are, right? So it's very clear that their ammo has not been fully utilized. They haven't used every gun in their arsenal. We understand that. That's not something that's new, though.
No, it's not.
What's happened in the last 20, 23 years is a massive evolution of the ecosystem to a point where you see collaboration almost on a commercial scale. And what that means is people are sharing knowledge, they're sharing networks, and they're sharing cyber weaponry.
So she's talking about those advanced persistent threats that we know of, right? The APTs
and
that are out there.
We've done episodes. We've done some shows on it.
Yep. Yeah, that are often sponsored by nation states, but but may actually lean more into like political alignment with some of those nation states, not just monetary compensation for a lot of what they do. So that's understandable when we talk about geopolitics, where the risks are coming from.
Yeah. And that's a dangerous synergy. I mean, when nation states see criminal organizations as being an ally against a particular target, and the idea that they're going to enable, fund, or resource those cyber criminals in new ways, that is a frightening prospect.
Now, I'm a computer scientist, so I feel like I should drill down a little bit on the technology risks before I hand over to colleagues. Whenever we come to Davos, we're always inspired at the potential that technology can bring to all of us. And right now, today, everybody's immersed in the metaverse, or at least dreaming of the metaverse. And if not the metaverse, it's quantum, or it's artificial intelligence and things like that. These huge investments come alongside, as we all know, with any new technology, any new business model, any new supply chain, any new ecosystem, any new trends in the way in which we humans engage with technology can bring about new attack surface and opportunity. And that's happening and growing at a significant pace. So if you imagine this, our ambitions for digital and data growing at a pace. Unfortunately, that means the potential for harming us because we're becoming so dependent upon it is growing at a pace. Yeah. That then amplifies the interest of cyber criminals and cyber terrorists.
Stop right here for a second.
That's growing at a pace.
Listen to what you said. That answers the question of why I got into cybersecurity. I mean, in a nutshell, she just described why. I've been a computer scientist since I was a kid, before I even went to college. As far as being a programmer, at least, emerging computer scientist. But the point is, that was my life. Figuring out all the things you can do with computers was the focus until, I got to a point and realized that everybody was like me, focusing just on what we can do and not what can be done. That's not necessarily intended. And that statement that she made, is such an important thing. I think is overseen. It's overseen so much. I even was in a discussion with a senior leader once about this. And that was the point I was trying to make to him. And this is a person who was very responsible to a lot for very, very critical information systems, national security implications and everything. And the whole speech that I gave him was, we've been moving at such a clip with everything that we can use these tools to do that we just haven't been watching what that opens up. And the more we put our lives, our resources, our everything in cyberspace, then it's only logical that cybersecurity and cybercrime have to rise with it. But it hasn't been the case. Everyone's pushing forward on the new technology, but they're reticent, hesitant, and cheap when it comes to defending those new technologies and those new forays.
Yeah, over reliance on technology is an old cliche that we've seen tons of times in movies and books and stories and in the
but
news.
It's a reality.
I think but it's a reality, and I think the digitizing of life, as we kind of call it sometimes, it's like putting anything from the real world into the digital world is going to follow major risks, right? Just like walking outside your front door, there's risks that are being accepted. But I think something that is out there, but people don't know, are the risks when they do that. She brought up metaverse. She brought up quantum computing. We're talking about things that are very complicated and not easy to discuss to the general population out there or to the general user. And so by utilizing the technology, I don't know that there's a full understanding of the risks that are being accepted just by utilizing it or depending on it.
Yeah. Well, especially between AI and quantum. I mean, AI and quantum are going to revolutionize the way we interface with computers and digital systems. Metaverse, I think, is a little overstated, but it probably has a role too. But I think that one gets overstated. But AI and the leap into quantum computing, there's very little overstatement there in the impact that those are going to have, and the potential risks that they will also bring into our use of these digital systems.
Right.
But let's keep going.
As we take a look at the landscape now, which is changing, what jumps out to you about the technology, the approach from a policymaker to a company level that is required here to bolster digital resilience globally, given the threats we are facing?
Well, that's a great question. Maybe if I could start with what keeps me up at night, and that would be really the threat of a complete disruption, a digital storm, as you said, complete disruption to global communications. And
so the International Telecommunications Union, right? This is the organization that basically works with all the vendors, all the technology, emerging standards, everything that has to do with the fundamental telecommunication equipment that we're relying on. She's the Secretary General of that organization. So when we think about that, it makes sense that she's going to comment on her deepest fear at night being a disruption to telecommunications, because that's her whole world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they're a United Nations agency, so yeah, absolutely. Her fear is going to be a global collapse of communication, 100%. I think and I don't think it's overstated. We'll just put that out there. I don't think that's an overstated concern. I think that for somebody who's as specialized as she is in this realm, it should absolutely be a concern.
Cisco works globally, building digital resilience for institutions, governments, companies. Are you raising the red flag on the threat level this year and next?
Well, it's first of all, thanks for having me. There's so many things happening in the way people are working and the way enterprises are building. I'd say the threat landscape has evolved tremendously, and it's expanding rapidly. And then layer on the geopolitical dynamics that are happening. We're at a high risk level right now. Our team has shifted this year to not only the business opportunity. We do several $1 billion in cybersecurity every
Subtle
year,
brag.
but our team has come to the conclusion that we have a responsibility.
So it's all about the connections. It's all about connections. Which of course Cisco builds the connections. That they're the backbone hardware provider. Okay, so it's all about that. And then, by the way, we do.
And so we believe we now have to bake security deeply into the network, because that's the only place where you can really guarantee the protection.
See, that's the point. Everything is about the network, because that's what so that's really the point. To the ITU, everything is about fundamental communications. To Cisco, everything is about the network. What's Microsoft's going to say? Everything is about your PC experience. I mean, they're covering critical components of cybersecurity. Don't get me wrong, they are. Those are all critical components. But the reality is, they're missing a huge element to what really is involved in cybersecurity. Here's the problem, though, with looking at cybersecurity in a net-centric perspective. It becomes beside the point what is where. It's all about the throughput. But the point is, it really matters what is where. Bottom line is if you think of the network as the highway, right? Well, then the cars on the highway are just the intermediary between what's in the destinations at the different points.
So I'll give you a few examples. Number one, just hybrid work and mobility. Everybody is everywhere, and so you have to protect them regardless of where they are. We're having to think about the home as a small branch office now. And the second is most enterprises are moving away from having their own dedicated network out to their remote locations. And they're basically creating virtual networks on top of the internet. Okay, so they're connecting to the internet, and then they're having secure tunnels or connectivity through the internet to get to cloud services like what Brad and the team deliver.
So far he's been working on selling at least 3 different products: his Soho routers, his Wi-Fi. Now he's selling Cisco AnyConnect. So we can see this is definitely Cisco centric in his perspective.
His perspective is obviously going to be network oriented, right? That's the paradigm in which he's viewing cybersecurity through. But
and that's what he's selling.
So
that's what he's selling. He's selling network equipment. And when you look at everything he's saying, he's looking at all the reasons why you need to buy Cisco networking.
Right, exactly.
That's what he's saying.
So we've talked about this quite a lot, right? When we view cybersecurity through this narrow lens of technology or network infrastructure only, we have a major blind spot. And he mentioned it in one of his listings of his services, right? We have mobile individuals, we have people working from home, and those are users. Users are initiating that move. And they're also introducing that vector of attack, right? By having a user there in place. So yeah, we're definitely missing a part of sound cybersecurity for sure by focusing solely on that network side. But again, he's the CEO of Cisco, so he should be selling Cisco, right?
That's it. That's his job. He's selling product though. That's what he's there to do. Be scared so that you buy more product. And not be scared, and therefore let's find some common solutions. Although to the end that common solutions sell more of my product, I'm cool with that. But in the end, it's product. And the problem with being so network centric is the network is the transport. The network does the connection, as he's been alluding to. But it's only when you're worried about data in flight that's your risk, which means only if you're moving something sensitive across the wire is the wire your core thing, your core problem. Very often what we transmit across the wire is probably on the more secure side of what's being, what we have in terms of IT assets throughout the entire process. So, with that being the sole focus of everything, you're going to have a huge
not that I want to, take too much away from, multi-million-dollar, CEOs out there, but, it's due to the fact that Cisco has focused so highly on security, right? Their solutions are, effective. They have robust security packages for, their hardware and their offerings. That's all well and good, but we've seen time and time again, data breaches still occur. Right, hackers find ways right around it, and it happens at the application level layer. It happens at every other layer on top of the network, and they have sound secure infrastructure in a lot of cases, and still are breached.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not the bash. I actually love Cisco. I'm a stockholder. I'm certified Cisco professional. I have a Microsoft certification too. So I'm not here to bash either of these guys, but just the perspective of where they fit. They're just puzzle pieces, puzzle pieces in a huge jigsaw, a kaleidoscope, to mix metaphors there. There's so many different aspects.
Yeah, I also think,
it's a jigsaw puzzle of a kaleidoscope view. So. The idea of trying to reduce things down into a single perspective is going to leave
no doubt. But I think there's something we didn't talk about this as much last week when we talked about the outlook for 2023 also. But these reports aren't really for the layman, right? They're not for the general population. This is a business leader forum, right? This is for where business leaders come and they discuss all of the world economic issues that are out there, including cybersecurity, of course. So it's understandable that you have a business leader like Cisco there talking about, hey, this is how we do this. Same with what Microsoft, I'm sure, will say sooner or later. There's no industry representative, though, to counteract that, and that's a problem, right?
Well, see, that's really my critique. Honestly, that's really my critique. When you look at the panel itself, the panel is academic, network, endpoint software company. That's the panel. That means that the perspective of whoever even organized the panel says that when it comes to the world economics consideration for cybersecurity, we're mainly focused on the network and the general purpose software endpoint and that product centric view of cybersecurity. That's where we're going to find our solutions. As a cybersecurity professional, I have to say that's only part of the picture.
So what you're saying, what we need to do is we need to start a campaign to get you on this forum next year. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah, right.
All right, listen.
No,
listen up. Listen up, all of our viewers,
keep going,
all of our listeners. Right now, we got to start a campaign. We're going to get Michael C. Hill on next year's World Forum.
No.
We're going to do it. The World Economic Forum 2024. Michael C. Hill is going to be on that panel.
Yeah. Right.
Aim high, right?
Moving
Aim
on.
high.
Brad, let me turn to you because there are constant threats here as we take a look at cybersecurity from the geopolitical side to what we're seeing from criminals. Just weigh in on the extent of the threat that you think we're facing.
Well, I actually think the current situation is pretty textured, is the way I would put it. The first thing I would just note is that the last 12 months have been the biggest victory for defensive cybersecurity technology since the cybersecurity profession was created, in my view.
That should have been a headline. That could have been a headline in and of itself because it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
We have not had a situation like we've had in Ukraine, in Russia, with the geopolitical mess that it's caused. We haven't had that with regards to defensive cybersecurity, not at that scale. And I don't know. I'm sure he's going to go and talk more about it. But at the end of the day, how many successful cybersecurity attacks have there been from Russia against Ukraine? Right?
Yeah.
There's
and you know that is an important thing. You got to actually be balanced when you talk about these things. So you start off with a doom and gloom statement, and then he's going to be the optimist on the panel, which is it's good to see. And we have to acknowledge success when success occurs. We really do. We have to acknowledge improvement when there is improvement. In fact, ultimately, the greatest incentive to get more buy-in is to show what success looks like.
It shows, hey, this can actually work.
Explain.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where you are, but this is where you could be. And the gap between where you are and where you could be is not as costly as not changing.
The gap's not as big as you think it might be. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
It's not. It's on terms of just, return on investment, cost benefit analysis. It's in your interest. And that's the thing that fails to get communicated, I think, as often as it should.
The last 12 months have witnessed the most vigorous, aggressive, sustained, destructive wave of cybersecurity attacks in history. It's been Russia, the Russian military, seeking to pound targets across Ukraine as well as 6 in Poland. Who has read about a massive cybersecurity defeat in Ukraine? No one. There hasn't been one.
Right, yeah. So I swear I didn't skip ahead, but he's absolutely correct. And we're beating a dead horse at this point, but we really should be touting these victories, right? There should be more focus on what's going right than, oh God, we're all going to die in the future, right? Absolutely.
But the thing is, the reason why we have to worry about the doom and gloom scenario is because how many organizations are doing cybersecurity as well as Ukraine? And I'm talking about cybersecurity defense. They're doing it well. They're doing what all these organizations should be doing. But the truth is, most organizations aren't doing it. If Russia were targeting, many other organizations around the world, the result would be very, very.
Yeah, and I'll take the point of the professor from Oxford when she did talk about advanced persistent threats and the real risk of the geopolitical spectrum is we don't know what we don't know. Right? That's Cyber 101, right? We don't know what we don't know, and we don't know if the weapons that Russia has, the cyber weapons, are more robust than what they've already shown. So there is risk there, of course, and you can lay a dark cloud, I guess, over this whole positive, thing we're trying to spin. I think that's a realistic approach, but still, you have to celebrate the victories when they come, because oftentimes they're so few and far between in this industry.
There hasn't been one. And this represents one of the important advances, in my view, really over the last 5 years, It's the advance in defensive cybersecurity technology, especially the combination of threat intelligence and endpoint protection. But I think the reason the situation is textured is all this can be true and threats can be rising at the same time. Why? Well, one is because the landscape is so broad, and because there are many that have vulnerabilities, either because they're creating technology without the kinds of controls in, say, the supply chain, or they're not deploying all of the protections that exist.
Now, I got to say, of the panelists, and I'm someone who's been known to bash Microsoft for over 20 years, but I actually have to say that was the most balanced and lucid commentary out of anyone that's been up there so far.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the Cisco guy's just trying to sell stuff. You know, the representative from the ITU is talking about doom and gloom on global communications. You know, the academic is like all academics, thinking, you know, in very abstract terms. You know, but the Microsoft guy actually is talking about real things. I mean, you know, are you vulnerable because you haven't deployed your security measures the way you should? You're not following best practices. You're, you know, and maybe in some cases you have, you know, on the supply side, someone not taking care of their supply risk and sourcing things with, you know, without consideration to the fact that it was, you know, made in China, where rogue chips were, you know, embedded into the system. You know, those are very lucid and valid considerations. But the point is, cyber defense can work, and it has proven itself to be effective generally when it's applied properly. And that's the
the
big
thing
caveat.
I actually like. What I like most about what he has said, and I think it's a very realistic take. Cybersecurity is broad. The application of cybersecurity is extremely broad. The most important thing isn't is applying, you know, a secure network, and it's definitely not through that tunnel. It's very broad and requires broad application. Absolutely. So I appreciate him coming from that perspective.
Chuck, I want to pick up on your comments around the network. Do you need to shrink the network to try and keep it safe? And what I mean by that is this deglobalization theme, that you need to stop investing in certain places.
I'm going to say Cisco says no.
To shrink the network.
I'm thinking Cisco is definitely going to say no. But also the practicality of that is,
well, the cat's out of the bag, right? I mean, we're not going back.
It's out of the bag, and you know what are you going to say? You know, cut off the people who need technology the most, and only allow those who already have a glut of it.
Well, I mean, look at our episode last week, right? We're dealing in international forums all the time for communication and networks. It's just we're not cutting that down.
I think that's a great theory, but it's not going to happen. And we've seen the Russians. I mean, they attacked us for 90 days straight after we pulled out of Russia, and we actually published a document about it, so it's all public information. But I don't think so. I think that I think the reality is that we have to integrate security at every point, right? I mean, it has to be integrated everywhere. It's got to be integrated at the demarc of the branch or the home or the mobile device or whatever. It's got to be on the edge of the cloud where these guys are operating. It's got to be sitting in the electrical grid. I mean, it has to be everywhere. And so
that constitutes everywhere, by the way.
Yeah, which is that's the motif. You know, everywhere connected. Buy more Cisco products. And like I said, I'm a stockholder, so I mean, buy more Cisco products. Great, you know. But it's just hilarious.
I think it's point. I think it's a point proven here that business leaders are receiving information that is not as broad as it should be. Right? They're receiving information about, you know, securing networks. They're receiving information about how they need to, you know, introduce VPNs and so on and so forth. And that's all well and good, but there's other aspects to the application of cybersecurity that they're not hearing also. And that might be why, I mean, if you know, I don't mean to provide too much conjecture here, but that might be why they see such a robust bill at the end of any time they want to try to increase their security or make it more robust, is they see this very large bill at the end of the day for implementing certain architectures, certain solutions, certain software solutions. And they go, I think what we have now is fine. Right? Like we can get away with what we have now.
Yeah, because it's all about cha-ching, cha-ching, sell more products. Well, you know what? Our old system didn't do this. So let's just refresh your entire infrastructure with all our new stuff, Yeah.
And we'll also sign you up.
Come on, man. But let's see what the
a monthly subscription for, a cybersecurity, as a service. And we will maintain certain, we'll cost it out based on our users and so on and so forth. And there's a whole other bill. So we can build the infrastructure, give it to you, and implement it and maintain it at the same time. Yeah, that's costly.
Like they say, money,
for sure.
Yeah, money. Money.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I would say this, I've worked in cybersecurity since the last century. And whenever we have imagined that we can somehow shrink down to the crown jewels, people have been wrong about that, actually, because the system is not just technology. And so back in the olden days, this notion that you could have air-gapped systems that were considered more critical than others, and somehow we'd keep all the bad stuff out. And that only works, of course, if human beings are not involved.
Okay, so she made a very point.
That's something. Well, let me say this real quick. She's kind of hitting a point of what I was thinking as they were talking about it. You can't shrink it if you think of shrinking it as endpoints and participants in the environment, the actual nodes of the internet. No, you're not going to shrink that. But you can shrink it in terms of what communication goes where. What's your I/O between your nodes? That's where you can shrink it. It's just not a shrinking of the expanse. It's not a shrinking of the depth and breadth, but it's a shrinking of the communication, and therefore a shrinking of the attack.
Right. And I think we can extrapolate more on what she was talking about, but I think, the concept of like least functionality comes into play there a little bit when we talk about shrinkage, but ultimately something she said that I wholeheartedly agree with is essentially humans are part of the system too, right? That's huge. That's huge. Mm-hmm. That's huge. Yeah. We could talk systems all day and that's all very abstract. And it's all very, based on, here's the network architecture, here's our software, here's our applications, here's our services. But at the end of the day, those things are implemented, configured, maintained, and utilized by human beings. That's it.
Yeah, she actually described a drawing that I use in half of my cybersecurity classes, a drawing of the three-legged stool. Yep. Technology, processes, and humans. Those three elements are part of it. And to try to fix everything with one leg of the stool is never going to do it. So she said it, and I do agree with it.
So believe it or not, we actually only made it through about 15 minutes of the forum, and we still have like another half an hour to go through. But this episode's getting way too long at this point. So tell us down in the comments, should we make another episode to go through the rest of the forum? Go ahead and let us know. Look, I think that's going to do it for today's episode. But if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button, hit that ring button, and also give us a like if you enjoyed today's episode. For Mike Hill, I'm Angie Valencia. Remember, stay safe, be secure, be sure. We'll see you next time.